what was that like starting young? How do you feel it changed the way that you are now as an actor? When did you know that you wanted to really do this for your life?
How old were you when you started?
11.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, around the
Like
same.
around the same age.
It's a funny thing, you know, it turned out all right, but it isn't like a life that I would want necessarily, or it was really hard when I started out, and just like sort of the bottom of absolutely every barrel, and like my first agent was also a part-time undertaker.
No.
Yeah.
That's really crazy.
And
how did that combination come about?
you know, it's just, it was, I don't know. I don't know.
It's like a really odd pair of professions to match.
But that was like, that's like where it all kind of began. So like sitting here with you now, I'm like, it worked out okay, but it's definitely like, wow, like a really long way, and not necessarily like a very nice one. It's like a hard sort of childhood to have, or like a lack of a childhood to have. I do love doing it, and I still love doing it, and I can't really imagine doing anything else, and I want to keep doing it. But I don't know, when I see kids on set, or like when I work with kids in movies, I feel really torn about their role there, or...
Yeah, and we end up doing that a lot too. Like I feel like more than men, because so many female parts are like moms. And I mean, it's like I feel like I always work with a kid practically.
I know. And I feel like an extra sort of protectiveness, and also a desire to be like, so do you have anything, other interests?
Yeah, totally. You should really get into science.
Girls in science are so cool. Was there a defining moment that you knew that this was the career for you?
It's funny because I forget where, I read it recently that someone was saying like, think about what you love when you're 11, and like that's your, like for adults who are kind of feeling lost or whatever, and like try and regain that. And it's funny that they like pinpointed that age, because you know, you say you started then, that's when I started. My husband started dancing then. It's like, I feel that there is something around that time where you kind of do have your instinct about, you know, what you really love, what you love doing. And I don't know where it came from, because there's like no one in my family I was told, you know, was ever really performing, you know, and it wasn't like, it was no option to me. Like it didn't seem like anything possible or realistic from, it wasn't presented to me in it that way and by anyone. But I really loved it. So now I take that as sort of like, oh, I must have known then. But I think it took me a really long time to accept it, because I came from such like a serious academic family where like the only thing that was like acceptable was to be like very like literate and educated, and like, you know, you become a professor or a doctor or a lawyer, like, you know, you're, I mean, Jewish, like we're very Jewish. And so it was like silly always to be my dad pulled me aside when I was like 25 and was like, I think it's time for you to go to law school. Was like, I think you should, or graduate school. He's like, you know, and I was obviously like working a lot and like, you know, and he was like, I think you should find something, like, not that he was like saying that it was like bad, but more that he was like, I think you'll be more fulfilled if like you have, you know, something more like a life of the mind, you know. So it took me a while, I think, coming from that background to be like, no, this is what I want, and this is what I love, and I enjoy this, and like accepting that what I love is like not hyper, like, you know, academic. It can be very stimulating and it can be intellectual. It isn't always.
Do you think that that motivated you to direct?
Probably. Yeah, especially with like what I chose to direct was like so like serious. Like I wasn't like, I'm gonna make a romantic comedy, which is probably more like my personal taste of what I like seeing. that I probably was still like trying to show my dad like that I can be a serious person. But yeah, I think it's definitely motivated me to try other things, because I do find myself more fulfilled when I feel like I'm like learning something from what I'm doing and pushing myself to new places. I'm sure that's universal. But
was that just like a whole other level directing? I just can't even imagine. I can't even begin to wrap my brain around like
it's
the
just really
complications.
different. I feel like it's.
Did you
really
enjoy
different
it?
from acting. I really loved it, but it's totally different. Like acting, you can just lose yourself in your own world, and directing, you have to be so conscious of everything and managing lots of things. It really was close to parenting to me, because you're taking care of all these people and trying to encourage the best out of them and creating a vision for like, you know, their future and their creation.
Someone will come up to me and say the first line of the day's line, and I'll say the second half back, and that's my favorite fans, kind of, because I'll just.
Yeah.
But I have certain Wooderson fans who are like, well, quote Wooderson to me. Now people will come up obviously to you, quote the dude and stuff all the time. How's that feel?
Oh, well, I love that.